I stared at my phone screen, my hands trembling as I read the WhatsApp message that had just appeared. After 3 years of complete silence, there it was. A message from my younger sister Penelope. I'd kept the same number through everything, thinking maybe someday someone would reach out with an apology. Instead, I got this. "Hey, Veronica." The message read, with way too many exclamation points. "I know we haven't talked in forever, but I'm turning 35 next week and having a huge party at Mom and Dad's. Everyone's going to be there, the whole family. You should totally come. We miss you so much and it's time to put all that drama behind us, don't you think?" There were photos attached. The dining room at my parents' house decorated with expensive-looking balloons and flowers, a catered spread that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. My chest tightened with a familiar anger. 3 years. 3 whole years since I'd spoken to any of them. My parents, Penelope, or the army of judgmental relatives who thought they knew what was best for my life. I'd gone completely dark on social media, never posted photos of Zara, never shared updates about my teaching job or my small victories as a single mother. As far as they knew, I'd simply vanished after my divorce. I'm Veronica, 38 years old now, and I've learned to be proud of who I've become. Back then I was 35, trapped in a marriage that was slowly killing my spirit, teaching high school English in the same town where I grew up. Everything seemed manageable until that awful night. The night Blake came home drunk and admitted to everything. My finger hovered over the delete button. I should just erase this message and go back to grading papers like nothing happened. That's what I'd been doing for 3 years, and honestly, my life had become something beautiful without them in it. But something made me pause. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was time to show them exactly who I'd become. I picked up my phone and called the one person who'd stood by me through everything. "What's wrong?" Marcus answered immediately, recognizing something in my voice. "You won't believe what just showed up on my phone," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "My sister Penelope. She's having a birthday party and wants me to come, like nothing ever happened," I said. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I ran my hand through my hair, a nervous habit I developed during those dark months after the divorce. "I think I want to go," I said. "Veronica, are you sure? After what they put you through during the divorce," he asked. "Yeah, I think it's time. It's been 3 years, and I'm not the same broken woman who left that town," I said. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and booked a flight. The party was next weekend at my parents' house, a 4-hour flight that felt like crossing into enemy territory. I'd moved to Oregon after my world fell apart, putting half the country between me and their toxic judgments. As I pulled out my suitcase, I wondered how much they'd all changed. Did my mother still spend a fortune at the salon every week, keeping up appearances for the country club? Did my father still wear those expensive suits even in retirement, playing the part of the distinguished former bank executive? And Penelope. Was she still living off our parents' money while working part-time at some meaningless job, pretending her life was Instagram perfect? On the plane, my mind kept drifting back to that nightmare, the night my world crumbled. Blake stumbled through our door at 2 a.m., reeking of alcohol and perfume. I was grading papers, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. When I looked up, his bloodshot eyes told me everything was about to come out. "I can't do this anymore," he slurred, collapsing into the chair. "Can't do what, Blake?" I asked. "Pretend I'm happy. Pretend I love you. Pretend this marriage isn't a joke," he said. My papers scattered as my hands went numb. "I've been cheating. Multiple women. And gambling. The savings are gone. All of it," he said. But worse than Blake's betrayal was what came next. When I called my parents sobbing, I expected comfort. Instead, Mom said, "Marriage takes work, Veronica. You can't just give up." Dad added, "Blake's going through a rough patch. Maybe if you'd been more supportive." Then Penelope delivered the final blow, "You have been distant lately. Maybe this is partly your fault?" Blake always seemed unhappy. That's when I realized my family had chosen sides and it wasn't mine. I filed for divorce that week. I quit my job, packed what mattered, and left. 4 months, relatives called saying I was being dramatic. Divorce is such an ugly word, they whispered. Think about the family's reputation, they said. I didn't respond to any of them. I deleted my Facebook, changed my number, and disappeared into a new life where I could breathe. Now, 3 years later, I was going back. As the plane touched down, my stomach twisted into knots that reminded me of those first months after the divorce. Was I making a huge mistake? Maybe, but I was also burning with curiosity. I wanted to see their faces when I walked through that door. I wanted to see if any of them had the decency to feel ashamed of how they'd treated me. I took an Uber from the airport to my parents' house, the same colonial they'd bought when Dad got his promotion at the bank. The driver tried to chat about the weather, but I was too focused on controlling my breathing to respond. When we pulled up to the familiar brick facade with its perfectly manicured lawn, I paid through the app and stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. The house looked exactly the same. Pristine, expensive, designed to impress the neighbors. Taking a deep breath that tasted like old memories and fresh determination, I walked up the stone pathway and rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door, her salon-perfect blonde hair and diamond earrings catching the afternoon light. For a moment, she just stared at me like I was a ghost. Then her eyes went wide with shock. "Veronica," she whispered, her hand flying to her throat. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I got Penelope's invitation," I said. I stepped into my childhood home and immediately felt the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on me. The expensive chatter died down as relatives turned to stare in disbelief. Mom led me into the living room where the party was in full swing, everything decorated in Penelope's favorite shade of pink. Dad stood near the bar cart, a crystal tumbler of bourbon frozen halfway to his lips. "Veronica?" He managed, his voice cracking slightly. "Is that really you, sweetheart?" Before I could answer, I heard the familiar sound of relatives whispering behind their hands. They looked me up and down like I was a museum exhibit, their voices carrying just far enough for me to catch fragments. "She looks so different. Teaching must not pay very well," they said. My Aunt Debbie, who'd never learned the art of inside voices, leaned toward my cousin and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "Well, divorce certainly takes its toll, doesn't it?" I pretended not to hear, scanning the room until I found Penelope. She stood in the center of everything, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my car payment, her arms loaded with expensive jewelry that caught the light. When our eyes met, she plastered on that same fake smile I remembered from childhood, the one she used when she was about to say something cruel. She approached me with arms outstretched, like we were long-lost best friends. "Veronica. I'm so glad you came," she gushed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I knew you'd show up alone. Still haven't managed to find yourself a new husband, huh?" she said. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "Good to see you too, Penelope," I said. Aunt Debbie materialized beside us with a wine glass and a predatory smile. "Veronica, honey, you know I was remarried with 2 stepchildren by your age," she said, looking me up and down like I was a charity case. "Time isn't exactly on your side anymore, is it?" she said. My mother appeared at my elbow, nodding along like a bobblehead. "Penelope's doing so well for herself, and you're still, well, starting over at 38, she sighed dramatically. "It's such a shame what happened with Blake. A good man is so hard to find these days," she said. I forced my face into a polite mask, though inside I was fighting the urge to scream. This was exactly why I'd disappeared for 3 years. Every family interaction became a performance review of my personal failures. My cousin Tara grabbed my arm with the enthusiasm of someone who thought she was being helpful. "You really need to put yourself out there again," she said firmly. "That whole divorce thing was years ago now. You can't hide behind it forever." She pulled out her phone with the urgency of an emergency responder. "I found my second husband on this dating app. Let me set up your profile right now," she said. "Thanks, but no," I said, extracting my arm from her grip. Aunt Patty swooped in like a vulture sensing weakness. "Veronica, sweetie, you're not getting any younger," she said with the bluntness of someone who thought brutal honesty was a virtue. "I know this divorced man from my church. He's got some baggage and he's not much to look at, but you can't be too picky at this point in your life, she said. I nodded politely, letting their poison wash over me like rain off a window. They had absolutely no idea what was about to hit them, and I was savoring every second of their ignorance. I glanced around the room and noticed someone was conspicuously missing. Blake wasn't here, which made sense. Even my family probably had limits on how much humiliation they'd put me through. Finally, it was time for Penelope to open her birthday gifts. When my turn came, I approached her with a beautifully wrapped box. An expensive silk scarf I'd chosen specifically because it cost more than her usual presents. Happy birthday, Penelope, I said, looking directly into her eyes. I hope this year brings you everything you truly deserve, I said. I loaded just enough meaning into those last words that she'd catch the implication, but no one else would understand. Her face flushed red, but before she could respond, the doorbell rang. My mother went to answer it, and I felt my heart start racing with anticipation. I'm sorry, I think you might have the wrong address, I heard her say in her most polite voice. No ma'am, I don't believe I do, came a deep, confident voice that made me smile for the first time all day. I'm looking for Veronica Thompson. I'm her fiancé, the person said. The room went completely silent as a tall, impeccably dressed man walked in, holding the hand of a bright-eyed 5-year-old girl. Every single person in that room turned to stare at me, their mouths hanging open in shock. Mom? My mother stammered, looking between Marcus and me like she was solving a puzzle. Your fiancé, she asked. I walked over to them, my heart swelling as Zara ran into my arms. Everyone, I said, lifting my daughter and feeling Marcus's strong hand on my back, I'd like you to meet my fiancé Marcus, and this is my daughter Zara. The relatives immediately swarmed around us like bees to honey, suddenly eager to be associated with success. They bombarded Marcus with questions about his law practice and cooed over Zara's articulate responses. I watched Penelope's face transform from smug satisfaction to pure fury as all attention shifted away from her birthday party. As Marcus charmed my relatives with his easy confidence and professional success, I thought back to how we'd met. 2 years after I'd started my new life in Oregon, I was teaching at Jefferson High when Marcus came to speak to my AP English class about constitutional law. At first, our relationship was purely professional. He was impressive, I was intrigued. Over months, we became friends, then something deeper. When I told him about Zara, about my divorce, about the family that had abandoned me, he listened without judgment. When I got the WhatsApp message from Penelope, I called Marcus, who was visiting his parents with Zara in California. We agreed he'd fly in for the party, making an entrance that would show my family exactly what kind of woman I'd become without their support. Penelope pushed through the crowd of relatives to confront me, her face twisted with jealousy. You planned this, she hissed under her breath. You deliberately upstaged my birthday party, she said. I met her gaze with calm satisfaction. You enjoyed watching me fall apart during my divorce, I replied quietly. Now it's your turn to watch me rise. My mother approached us, tears of confusion and regret in her eyes. Why didn't you tell us about Marcus? About getting engaged? We're your family, she said. You stopped being my family when you blamed me for Blake's cheating, I said simply. You chose to protect a gambling addict over your own daughter. You don't get to claim me now that I'm successful, I said. We stayed for another hour while Marcus answered questions about his practice and Zara impressed everyone with her vocabulary and confidence. When we prepared to leave for our hotel, my parents practically begged us to extend our visit. Can we at least get your new number? Your address. Mom pleaded, her voice breaking slightly. That doesn't matter, I replied, gathering Zara's jacket. We're flying back tomorrow morning, I said. As we walked toward the door, I saw Penelope standing alone by her pile of birthday gifts, watching us leave. For just a moment, I thought I saw something like regret flicker across her face. Then she turned away, and I realized that some people never really change. The next morning, we flew back to Oregon, leaving my shell-shocked family behind. Marcus held my hand throughout the entire flight, occasionally squeezing it and asking if I was processing everything okay. I was more than okay. For 3 years, I had fantasized about this moment. Showing up successful, engaged, with a brilliant daughter who was living proof that I'd thrived without their toxic influence. Reality had been even more satisfying than my dreams. Did you see Penelope's face when we walked in? I whispered to Marcus as Zara colored quietly in the seat between us. She looked like she'd been slapped, I said. He smiled, his eyes crinkling with amusement. Your entire family went through the 5 stages of grief in about 10 minutes. I think your father nearly choked on his bourbon when I mentioned my law firm, he said. After we returned home to our cozy house with its wraparound porch and vegetable garden, the messages started flooding in. WhatsApp notifications, Facebook friend requests, emails to my school account that someone must have found online. Every single day, sometimes multiple times. My parents wrote long, rambling messages about wanting to be part of Zara's life. They claimed she needed grandparents, that blood was thicker than water, that we needed to heal as a family. I didn't respond at first, just screenshot everything and saved it in a folder labeled, "Too little, too late." After a week of thinking it over, I finally replied to one of my mother's more desperate messages. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her I had no interest in reconciling, that I couldn't forgive people who had kicked me when I was already down. I added that Zara already had loving grandparents in Marcus's parents, who had embraced us both without conditions or judgment. The messages stopped after that. For 4 months, there was blessed silence. I focused on my students, on planning my wedding with Marcus, on watching Zara flourish in her new school. We were building something beautiful, the 3 of us. We didn't need the drama or the conditional love my birth family offered. Then, on a rainy Saturday morning in February, our doorbell rang. Marcus was at his office catching up on case files, and Zara was at a sleepover with her best friend Emma. I was alone, grading essays in my pajamas and enjoying the quiet. I opened the door and felt like someone had thrown ice water in my face. Standing on my covered porch were my parents, both looking smaller and older than I remembered, with matching suitcases at their feet. "How did you get our address?" I demanded, not moving from the doorway. Mom's eyes were already filling with tears. "We need to talk to you, Veronica. Penelope had her baby last month." She fumbled with her phone, showing me photos of Penelope holding a tiny newborn. "A little girl. She named her Lily," Mom said. "We know we messed up," Dad added, his voice rougher than usual. "We should have supported you during the divorce instead of what we did. We want to make this right." I noticed their expensive luggage then, the kind they used for their European vacations. They had clearly expected me to welcome them with open arms, to let them stay in my guest room and play happy family. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. "There's a coffee shop downtown," I said, crossing my arms against the February chill. "We can talk there." Disappointment and hurt flashed across my mother's face. I could practically see her imagining a different scenario. Tears, hugs, immediate forgiveness, and grandmother time with Zara. But I wasn't that broken woman anymore. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready for that kind of vulnerability again. At the coffee shop, we sat at a table by the window while rain streaked the glass. My parents looked completely out of place in the casual, artistic atmosphere of my adopted town. I ordered a latte for myself and waited for them to speak first. "We're sorry," Mom began, her manicured hands trembling around her coffee cup. "We should have stood by you when he did what he did to your marriage." She couldn't even say the words "I cheating" or "gambling." "When he destroyed our family," I supplied bluntly. "When he betrayed me and you blamed me for it," I added. Dad flinched like I'd hit him. "We handled everything wrong, Veronica. We thought we were trying to save your marriage, but we ended up losing you instead," he said. "Yes, you did," I agreed, my voice steady and cold. "You chose to protect my abuser over your own daughter. You always chose Penelope over me." "That's not true," Mom protested, but her voice was weak. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Isn't it? When we were kids, Penelope broke my science fair project the night before it was due. You told me to forgive her because she was younger. When she borrowed my homecoming dress without asking and ruined it with makeup stains, you said it was just fabric. When Blake was cheating and gambling away our savings, you told me to be a better wife." I took a slow sip of my latte. "So yes, you always chose her over me." They sat in uncomfortable silence for a long moment. Then Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. We'd like to stay for a few days. Get to know Zara. Maybe meet Marcus properly. Absolutely not, I said firmly. That's not happening. I'll send you school photos of Zara if I feel like it, but I'm not ready to have you in our daily life, I said. But we're family, Mom insisted, tears finally spilling over. Zara is our granddaughter, she said. Family doesn't abandon each other when things get tough, I replied. Family doesn't blame the victim. You weren't there when I needed you most. After we finished our coffee, I drove them to the nicest hotel in town. Mom cried openly as they checked in, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. I felt a small pang of guilt but pushed it down hard. They had made their choice 3 years ago when I was drowning. Now they had to live with the consequences of that choice. In the weeks that followed, Penelope started sending messages too. Long, rambling texts about how much she missed having a sister, how she wanted Lily and Zara to know each other, how we should put the past behind us. I read every single one and deleted them without responding. I didn't hate her anymore. That burning rage had cooled into something more like indifference, but I sure as hell didn't trust her either. A year passed like pages in a book I was finally enjoying. Marcus and I celebrated Zara's 6th birthday with a backyard treasure hunt and chocolate cake. Marcus's parents flew in from California, bringing thoughtful presents and genuine warmth. I watched them with Zara. Patient, engaged grandparents completely devoted to her happiness. That evening, a WhatsApp message popped up from my mother about Penelope's life falling apart. Her baby daddy was married to someone else and had disappeared, leaving her with no support. I stared at the message, waiting for satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty, like reading news about strangers. I deleted it without responding. That night, lying next to Marcus, I placed my hand on my stomach. I was 10 weeks pregnant with our first child together, though we hadn't told anyone yet. I knew once this baby was born, my parents would start their campaign again. As I drifted off, I thought about how different my life had become from 3 years ago. Everything was more beautiful than I'd ever dared to dream. 4 months passed, and my pregnancy was impossible to hide. Zara was thrilled about becoming a big sister to her baby brother James. We were converting the spare room into a nursery with sage green walls. I still hadn't told my parents about the pregnancy. Maybe after James was born, but for now I was savoring the peace. No unwanted opinions, no guilt trips, no drama. Just our growing family preparing to welcome its newest member. One evening in September, I was stretched out on the couch with my feet up while Marcus rubbed my ankles, when my phone buzzed with another WhatsApp message. I checked it and felt my stomach clench. What's wrong? Marcus asked, noticing my expression change. It's from Penelope, I said, scanning the message. She's asking if I got Mom's previous messages about her situation with Lily's father, I said. Are you going to respond? He asked. I thought for a moment, then set the phone on the coffee table. No. Not right now, I said. The next morning, another message arrived, this one from my mother. She wrote that she and Dad were seriously considering selling their house and moving closer to us, that they missed Zara terribly and wanted to be part of her daily life. She added that Penelope was really struggling as a single mother and could use family support, heavily implying that I should step up and help. I closed the message without reading the rest. I wasn't ready to have them in my neighborhood, wasn't ready to risk the peaceful life I'd built being invaded by their toxic dynamics. Maybe someday, but definitely not now. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, I was in the kitchen making soup when our doorbell chimed. Marcus was upstairs helping Zara with a school project, so I waddled to the front door, one hand supporting my lower back. I opened it and nearly stumbled backward in shock. Standing on my porch was Penelope, looking exhausted and holding a squirming toddler who was obviously Lily. Surprise, she said with a weak attempt at a smile. Can we come in? I drove all the way from home. I was too stunned to immediately refuse. I stepped aside and she entered, looking around our house with a mixture of curiosity and what might have been envy. This is really nice, she commented, bouncing Lily who was starting to fuss. This is Lily. Say hi to Aunt Veronica, baby, she said. I stared at my niece, seeing Penelope's features mixed with those of a man I'd never met. What are you doing here, Penelope? I asked. She sighed, suddenly looking much older than her 35 years. Mom gave me your address. I know I should have called first, but I was afraid you'd hang up on me, she said. You're absolutely right, I would have, I said without sugarcoating it. Before Penelope could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared with Zara close behind, both stopping short when they saw our unexpected visitors. Hello, Penelope, Marcus said, his tone professionally polite but clearly not welcoming. Penelope nodded, her eyes immediately going to my pregnant belly. You're pregnant again, she said, unable to hide her surprise. Mom and Dad don't know about this, do they? She asked. No, I confirmed firmly, and I'd appreciate if you kept it that way. Marcus gently guided Zara toward the kitchen. Why don't we finish your project upstairs while Mommy talks to her sister? He said, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. He knew I needed to handle this conversation on my own terms. Let's sit down, I suggested, gesturing toward the living room. Penelope settled on the couch with Lily on her lap, while I took the armchair across from them, keeping some distance between us. Why are you really here? I asked again, cutting straight to the point. She looked down at her daughter, then back up at me with something that might have been shame in her eyes. I wanted to apologize. Not through a text or a phone call, but face to face. She took a shaky breath. What I did during your divorce was unforgivable. I was jealous of you. I always have been. You were always the smart one, the successful one, the one with your life together. Mom and Dad were constantly holding you up as an example, she said. I let out a laugh that held no warmth. That's not how I remember it. They always made excuses for you, I said. Maybe they did, she admitted, but they were always telling me I should be more responsible like you, more focused like you. And when Blake messed up your marriage, I saw it as proof that you weren't perfect after all. So you decided to kick me when I was down, I said bluntly. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And look how that worked out for me. She gestured to Lily. I'm a single mother with no support, no reliable income, and a daughter who will never know her father, she said. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, anger at her past cruelty, satisfaction that karma had found her, but also an unexpected twist of sympathy. I knew exactly how terrifying it was to raise a child alone, how exhausting it could be even with a support system. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Penelope continued, her voice thick with unshed tears. I know I don't deserve that. But I wanted Lily to know her aunt and her cousin. I wanted to try to build something better between us, if you're willing to try, she said. I studied my sister carefully, really looked at her. The entitled, careless girl I'd grown up with was gone. In her place sat a woman who looked worn down by life and genuinely remorseful. I can't promise anything big, I said finally. But maybe we can start small. Photos of the kids, occasional messages. Eventually, maybe planned visits, I said. Relief flooded her face. Thank you, she breathed, tears finally spilling over. That's more than I hoped for, she said. We talked for another hour while Lily played quietly with some of Zara's old toys. Penelope told me about the struggles of single motherhood, about the man who had lied about his entire life, about how our parents were getting older and more demanding. I shared carefully selected updates about my teaching, about Zara's achievements, about the baby we were expecting. That night, after Zara was asleep, Marcus and I sat on our back deck watching the stars appear. I rested my head against his chest, feeling James move inside me. What are you thinking about? He asked, his fingers gently stroking my hair. About family, I replied. About second chances, I said. Are you going to let them back into your life? He asked. I considered the question seriously. Not all at once, I decided. But maybe slowly, carefully. For Zara and James, if nothing else, I said. The next day, I sent my mother a brief email. I attached a recent photo of Zara at her school science fair and mentioned that we were expecting another baby in the winter. I didn't say I forgave anyone or extend any invitations, but it felt like opening a door just a crack. 3 months later, James Marcus was born, 8 pounds, 2 ounces, with dark hair and his father's jawline. Marcus's parents flew in immediately, staying 3 weeks to help with Zara and the baby. When we brought James home, a package waited on our porch. Inside was a hand-knitted baby blanket and a card signed by my parents and Penelope. "Congratulations on your beautiful family. We're here whenever you're ready," it read. I showed Marcus the blanket, running my fingers over the stitching. "My mom taught me to knit when I was 8, I said. "She must have spent months making this," I said. I placed it in James's crib next to the quilt Marcus's mother had made. 2 blankets from 2 sets of grandparents. Maybe someday James would know both, but that would be my choice. I didn't know what that relationship might look like or how much I could trust them. But carrying anger wasn't helping anyone, especially not my children. As I tucked Zara into bed, watching her kiss her baby brother's forehead, I realized something. The greatest victory wasn't cutting my family out completely. It was building something beautiful despite what they'd done, then deciding on my own terms whether they deserved to witness it.